piece of wall that I've got a paper. I've got a switch plate in the way. Now this is a rough bit of wall. There's a lot of deviations in this wall. So straight away I'm going to have to fill this. If I was to use a blade on this, then with me spatula, or I use my filling knife, then if I start to cut this, I either work against the plate, which could be marking it, or I work against the wall. That way, because of all these deviations, the paper could tear. Also, you could be left with a gap if working that way, which exposes an edge of paper. Either way, trimming the paper, you're going to expose the backing, which over time will turn yellow. Also, if this plasterwork is not very good near the edge of the backing plate, then when you're cutting, it can punch through. So then when your paper dries, that will dry back, it'll shrink to it, so you'll be able to see round where the divots, where the holes are. Again, this is a plastic plate. You get, a lot of different types: wooden, brass effect, polished chrome. If you start to run a blade around this, you're going to mark it. When it comes to trimming the paper, if it's a thin paper and you're painting it, then inevitably you're going to have to paint onto this socket unless you back it off. Again, some papers are quite heavy texture. So for instance, these vinyls, this one isn't too bad, but you can get them quite thick. So then if you do cut with a blade, then the paper is going to be quite a few mil thick. Then you need to paint over that. So before you know it, this socket's going to be buried. So there are many reasons why I wouldn't use a blade. If you're taught that way, or you've seen it done that way, then usually it's going to be on a surface that is completely flat and workable. Again, this has got curved edges, which would make it more awkward to try and trim with a blade. So I need to release this and sort out all these edges. Just take a look. This side doesn't look too bad, but as we get near the top, it gets a little bit rough. So they're the areas when you're trimming, if you use a blade, where it will tear. So then round this side, we've got this bit of a dinge, and then underneath, this bit of a hollow. The plaster's just bowing in slightly. This is on a staircase, so this is visible as you come up the stairs. Now, as a professional, or even if you're doing this at home, DIY, are you going to fill that? Just leave that as it is and fill it. Again, fill underneath. Because then technically, you're just burying this plate. And if you are putting paper on, then you're going to be painting onto this. It's just rough and wrong. So I need to get this off. I just want to loosen these off. Just a couple of turns. 2 or 3 turns. That's enough. And then either with the butt of the screwdriver or a piece of wood, then just gently tap, just to free that off. Okay, so that's free there now. Now then, depending on the socket, then at times these screws can be quite short. So if the backing plate is quite deep and these have never been replaced, then if I start to undo these anymore, the chances are that these may pop off, come out of the bracket at the back. So with them being so short like that, then when you try to come to get them back in, they might not go in because the little bracket at the back in the plate is moving round. So what I like to do, depending on what job you're going on to, sometimes there may have been an electrician, and when they're replacing boxes and things, if the screws that they've got are different to what is in, yeah, then they're probably going to throw these away. So you may come onto the job and find a bag of bits left that the electrician's just not took away to throw away. So the customer may say to you, oh yeah, all that one's going in the bin. So have a look through, because here I've got 2 longer screws which will match with these. So if that does happen, then I'm alright. So I'm going to remove this a little bit more, because what I want to do now is run a piece of sandpaper around this rough edge. Don't want to use a blade as in a scraper or anything, just a bit of sandpaper run round. If the sandpaper won't fit, then I'll back these off a bit more. I've got one more side to do here. And when you're doing this job, where that screw sits, the depth here is technically, you don't want to go past that depth. So with my thumbnail, I can just, about 1/4 of an inch of paper, less than 1/4 of an inch, just want to take away the rough edge. I can just sit that in and use the thumbnail as a guide, so I'll never go past that point. Once you're happy that those rough edges have been smoothed down, then all you need to do now is vacuum the dust out or blow it out. Now this is sanded back, I can screw this up and then clean it. Got a damp cloth and I'll be able to clean all these edges, but screw it up so it's not floating around. When you've cleaned all the paint off, which depending what you're doing can be important. So again, if you're taking a paper off that's been painted, this could be painted over. And if you're applying a paper, a finished paper, then you either change the socket or clean the paint off. It'll be visible. Again, you could be putting a paper on, you could be going for a colour change, and any paint that's on this, you'll get a funny edge. So then you either fill it and then paint, or remove the paint first. So last screw to undo here. This is all cleaned off now, and just wipe any little bits away with your damp cloth. And then now I'm ready for the next bit. This time I've soaked this in diluted PVA. I've rinsed it out so it's just damp with PVA. Diluted. Just draw the socket back a little bit and just rub it into that plaster. Just deaden that dust a little bit. Just help the paper stick around these edges. Again, I'm not stuffing the cloth inside, it's just along the edge there. So I'll leave that to dry, and I'll get another cloth now and I'll just wipe around this socket. This is okay to fill now. Now what I need to do is slightly back this off more. So at this stage, so I know these screws are slightly long. I've already started to back them off. But if they aren't, then they can pop out when you're trying to make yourself a bit of space. So to make it easier to get these back, simply hold the socket, the plate, and as you're unscrewing, just slightly be drawing back, and you'll feel it come out the hole. Once it comes out the hole, put a few more turns back on it. So then that way you've got your maximum area to work with without this popping out. If they're a very short screw, like I say, it can be harder to get back in. So now I'll just get this filled. Got an area down the bottom here that wants doing. So not going beyond the plate. I've no need to with this because it's not fractured away. Sometimes you may have to remove this plate fully, draw it back so you can actually get some foam in and work and get that filled. So I'll just get some filler on this. Again, I just want to concentrate around the socket. Now for these edges, it's going to be awkward. So I've got a smaller knife. I can just work them in. I'll just get some filler in there first of all. And then I need to finish it. So mess that bit up there. Once the filler's in, take the damp cloth again, wipe this blade off and just smooth that over. Now I can just let this dry and get some sanding done, ready for the paper. So I'm going to leave the socket at the minute. If any does go on, wait till this dries, that'll easily wipe off. While this PVA is drying, I've totally backed this switch plate off. So the reason why you would never go past the point of this screw all the way round is because if we just take a look at the back here, so there's a live to the top of the plate, yeah, and then there's a live at the bottom of the plate. So always stay clear. Sockets are different. I'm nearly ready for papering this. So same as before, sand down the filler when it's dry, screw the block up. If you need to, carefully remove any filler off this plate. So wetting it in using a plastic scraper just to knock any off. Even your thumbnail will flick it off. Now I just need to screw this plate up, keeping it completely level. Important that it's level at this point when you screw it up. Piece of wall's ready for papering. So same process as before. Sand down, clean anything off the plate, and then deaden this dust with some diluted PVA on a cloth. So you can use a brush, but it may run down the back. So cloth is good enough just to deaden the dust. And then ensure that this plate or socket is screwed back perfectly level. Now, all I need to do is, without covering the screw holes, pop some tape on. Okay, Make sure that's firmly stuck down. And when I'm putting this paper in position, make sure that this last fold, that there's no dry paper here. I'll need to be able to put this straight over. Okay, so the fold's starting somewhere here. Light blocks is here. So just slightly just push that into position there. Now, I need to carefully mark where these corners are. So with the pencil now, so now I can pop a hole in the centre and work up to that pencil line, right up to it. Release the bottom fold. Now I can gently change position. So it's sliding around a bit. Okay. I'll gently just tease that over the end. A bit more on this corner. So if this is a wallpaper, you don't want to be going past here at all or having it tear, because then it just creates a mess. Okay, perfect. So again, gently just push this light into position. Now I can trim any excess from around the edges and just trim these bits here. Okay, last side trimmed. Okay, brilliant. Another good tip is paper hanging scissors. Depending on what type of paper you're cutting, then on the bench when the paper's dry, say if you're cutting heavy vinyls, the scissors take a lot more wear. So they may be okay on that particular paper when it's wet, when you're hanging it, but then some papers are so much like tissue paper when they're wet that a blunter pair of scissors will tear it. So I always keep another pair of scissors, which are, I mean, these are razor sharp, these are just for very light, awkward papers which are wet. I never use these on a dry paper. So now, with a spatula, there's no need to take this plate off anymore. These will be the most awkward ones, especially where there's casing like this. So with this in place, just keeping the paper completely where I need it, I just want to trim this excess off. Keeping as close as I can to this plate or socket. More awkward. Don't want anything trailing over too much, so okay, just a little bit of a white there. Now then, again, with the ceiling rose, I didn't need to back it off at all until this point. Now I need to get this paper behind, so this paper that's on now will hold this in place. So what I will do, before I was able to get my finger behind and just check the depth, so now I can just unscrew and wait till I feel a click. So just keep turning. Okay, there. Now just a couple more turns back, and same on this side. Okay, turn it back a couple of times. Now all I need to do is take this piece of tape and just give it a bit of a waggle. And gently tuck that paper behind. I've got plenty of room, the paper will go. Don't force it, because you don't want it to tear. So this was the side that didn't want to undo too much. So just persuade it. So it's only the tips of the bristle I used there. I didn't use any blades, so that's good now. Again, cloth, just wipe that round. So now I can tighten this up. I'm finishing for the day, so I need this to be safe. Now this is screwed back, I can just remove this tape. That saves you having to try and get behind this, because it's awkward when the paper's on. I'll just take a little look at this now. So from underneath, looking a lot better. That's looking square now. Perfect finish. Again, if you were wanting to use a blade, you would have to have cleaned all this up. So, especially if you're painting. That's brilliant, that. So, this depth here on this side will give you just a slight overlap all the way around. So generally on these sockets, your wires will be connected along here at the top at the back. Never put anything down. If you can, work with this electric off. Not all the time you can. So that depth there is crucial. Also, you may come onto a job where everything is clean, you don't have to do any filling. You come to do your papering and technically you wouldn't be backing these sockets off. It's better to keep them in position so they're not moving round, so you get a better accurate cut. When you do put your paper on and you undo this and then back it off to tuck the paper in, if you've not tucked this off during your preparation, then any debris, any dirt inside here can drop down into the back of this paper, and all this area then gets full of lumps. It really can spoil your job. So again, if you've not got too much preparation to do, always back these off before you've mixed any paste, before you've opened any paper, and clean behind. Make sure there's nothing going to drop down. That way you just get a neater job. That's going to dry back perfectly, that now.